Hey guys, welcome to the first Harvest Audio training video. Today we're talking about the LX7 Mono channel, part one. There's quite a bit to it, so we kind of split it up into two 15-minute videos. So today we're basically just looking at the sensitivity, the EQ, and a couple of other little things. Big thanks to Paul, Brandon, and Karen who helped me shoot this video. Karen did a lot of the video work. Paul and Brandon are helping make sure that I'm not missing things as I'm making the video. So big thank you to them. Have fun watching the video and let me know if I missed anything or if I'm leaving pieces out or if I'm not clear. Just send me an email or post in the Facebook group and I'll make sure to clarify that subject. So the channel strip that we're talking about today, we're going to look at channels 23 and 24. And the channels on the right hand side of the board are actually slightly different from the ones on the left side. And Paul brought up a good point. The difference being that there's a DIR pre button on the channels on the left hand side of the board, and that's short for direct pre. And so these channels on the back here have a direct output. So they're identical to these except that they also have that direct output. What that allows you to do is take a channel strip, it comes in, it goes to the board like usual, but then you can use a direct out for recording or something.
Okay.
The direct pre button sets whether the direct output is pre or post fader, which means whether or not it's affected by the level you're setting by this fader.
Okay.
So for example, if you want to record the input signal, you would press this button, and that means that the input signal goes out of the direct pre without being affected by the channel strip. However, if you want it to be affected by this level and the EQ and everything, then you leave it post.
Okay.
And then if this is all the way down, you won't get any signal out of the direct pre. Right. So the first thing on the top of all of the channel strips is the sensitivity or gain. It's called sensitivity on this board, but a lot of boards call it gain. And it basically sets how much of the input signal gets routed through the board. So this allows you to make sure that you're not doing a lot of different changes with the faders because your input signals are really different. So like a mic is going to come in and it's going to be a very low signal compared to a CD input or a keyboard or something like that. So you will bring the sensitivity up for a microphone, and that will allow you to use a signal that's approximately the same level throughout the rest of the board. So that's the first thing you want to do with the signal coming in, is set the sensitivity. To do that, you want to be able to see what the input signal is. And so you click the pre-fader listen button. And what this does is, first of all, it routes the input signal out of the headphone. So if you're listening, you'll be able to hear just this channel strip. And it also lets these lights show the input level of that signal. So now if I turn the gain up, you can see I'm starting to get a little bit of level from that signal. So you can hit the pre-fader button to listen to and set the gain for this channel. And then when you bring the gain up, you start to see some level indicators on the mains here. So you want all of the gain to be approximately the same here. So for a mic to get, plus 4 dB, I might have to go up to, negative 40 sensitivity. But because the CD comes in pretty hot, I'm actually going to set it to around negative 20. And the goal here is to get it to around 0 on all of your channels. That's what you're going for. And what
like on here?
So for if I pre-fader some of my other channels, I want to set the gain so that they're around 0.
All right.
And the reason for that is they might get considerably louder than that or quieter, but then you're approximately in the middle.
Yeah.
What you don't ever want to happen is you never want it to be up in the red because then it starts to clip and it'll sound distorted and problematic. So if someone's singing and they're around 0, that's good because then if they sing really loud for a second, they're still not going to clip.
Yeah.
So that's kind of you want to always aim for around 0 here. And that's basically it for the sensitivity.
So would the sensitivity be different according to the instruments? So like vocals would be, I see just looking at the settings right now, vocals seem to be higher, whereas the drums seem to be lower because the drums tend to clip easier because
Exactly.
Okay.
So you don't need to be as sensitive, you could say, to the drum channels because they're giving you more input signal anyways.
Okay.
So if we were to pre-fader all of these on a Sunday, they would probably all come out to around 0,
Okay.
even though the drums have a lower sensitivity because they're louder.
All right.
So is that the first thing you want to do when you come on the board is check the sensitivity?
Make
Yeah.
sure they're all set the right
Yeah,
way.
so every single Sunday morning, that's the first thing you do on all of the channels is make sure that your sensitivity is approximately right. Most of them aren't going to change, but if a different vocalist is on a different channel, they're going to definitely have different sensitivities.
Mm-hmm.
But like typically bass or electric or acoustic shouldn't change that much from Sunday to Sunday.
Okay.
So right next to the sensitivity knob, there is a button that says 100 hertz. And what this is a high pass filter for this channel strip. So what it does is it cuts off 18 decibels per octave below 100 hertz. So basically you have a mic that comes in, and when somebody breathes on a microphone, or if you've ever tapped a microphone, you generate a lot of very low frequencies that are actually really loud. And so what that comes out as is usually like a pop through
Yeah.
the system. And so on things like microphones, we always turn this on because typically the human voice isn't going to generate much below 100 hertz. And so what that does is if someone accidentally breathes in the mic or hits it or something, you don't get this really loud pop that comes through the system.
Okay.
And Paul noticed that it's selected on the snare, and the
That's
reason
because
for
it's,
that is because the snare's a pretty high frequency instrument, and we really don't want the kick drum bleeding through here. The kick drum is going to generate a lot of frequencies below 100 hertz. So I put that cut on there so that I'm isolating the snare a little bit by cutting out all of those lower frequencies.
Okay.
So it's basically a special kind of EQ that they put on as a switch because you typically either want it on, you really want to cut all of those low frequencies, or you don't want it at all. Like for example, you're never going to put that on a bass because a bass generates a lot of frequencies you want that are below 100 hertz.
Okay.
So that's the high pass filter switch that you get on every channel. Below that is the EQ for that channel. So we have a 4-band EQ with 2 sweepable mids on every channel. And then under the EQ, there's a switch to turn the EQ for that channel on and off.
Okay.
So if that's actually really helpful if you're EQing a channel and you're not sure if it sounds better than the original, you just click that and you're going to hear the original signal, and then you can hear what changes you're making by turning the EQ on.
So
they're
you have the
all
EQ
on
on
for this?
everything, obviously.
Yeah.
You want to always on, right?
Yeah.
Basically.
Okay.
And so the settings here, everything's pointing straight up, which means we're not making any changes to the signal at all, because the way each of the bands work is you can either boost or cut a frequency. So basically there's a high frequency, a high mid, a low mid, and a low frequency. So the high frequency and the low frequency are basically your bass and treble.
Okay.
And they're centered at a specific frequency, which I should know because it's in the manual, but I don't know what it is. I think the high frequency, my guess is that it's probably around like 20 kilohertz. It's like extremely high frequency. The low frequency is probably around 50 hertz or something like that. And so what the white knobs on here let you do is either turn that frequency and frequencies around it up or turn them down.
Okay.
So for example, if you're working with a voice and you're not hearing enough of the S's or the T's, for example, then you can turn this up because S's and T's are approximately in that
frequency.
range, and that's actually going to boost just those
I'm
frequencies.
learning something.
Now, the way the cuts and boosts work is they are basically a bell curve. So you have the frequency like this, and say where my fingers touch is around 20 kilohertz, and I turn it up. I'm really turning it up along with frequencies around it. So it's not like I'm only turning up one specific frequency, I'm affecting a range of frequencies.
Okay.
And that's called the Q size. So on our EQ here, we have a fixed Q size, so we don't really know how much of the frequencies we're affecting, but some boards have a selectable Q or a sweepable Q, where you can either make it very narrow if you want to affect only like a very specific frequency, or wide if you want to turn kind of
All of it.
everything up a little bit. So that's basically what all of the white knobs do, is they either cut or boost a frequency or range of frequencies.
So if I turn to the left, it'll cut it,
Yeah.
and then to the right will boost it.
Yeah, so it says here like negative on this side and positive on this side in decibels. So you can go up to 15 dB up or down to 15 dB below.
The top one is treble, the bottom one's bass,
Right.
and this one's mid.
This one's your high mid and this one's your low
Low
mid.
mid.
High mid and
And
low
then-
mid. Okay.
That's true.
But like I said, these are what we call sweepable mids. So there's also these knobs that have black on them. And what they allow you to do is select the frequency that you're adjusting in that mid. So you can see here it says around 3K, the bottom is 550 hertz, and the top is 13 kilohertz.
Yeah.
So what that allows you to do is get very specific control. So I can say, okay, I want to cut 600 hertz. So I select 600 hertz with my sweep, and then I cut it with this knob. So that gives you a lot more control than the high frequency and low frequency, because you know exactly which frequency you're playing with.
So it targets a specific frequency you
And
want
then
to
you
boost or
it
cut.
Right.
boost it.
Okay.
So it gives you a lot more control over what you're changing. And one of the really nice things about the sweeps is what you can do is cut, say, for example, and then sweep through the frequency range, and you'll hear
The difference.
the difference, and you'll be able to tell which frequencies you're listening to. So for example, say there's a voice that's coming through and it just doesn't sound right. You know that there's too much of a frequency, but you don't know which frequency. You can just, cut it and then try to find the frequency by sweeping the mid through the different ranges.
And then from
Switching
there
to
you
a
can
radio.
adjust if you want to.
Yeah, less or
bring
more.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
So to demonstrate that, we have the gain set for this. So that's the unaffected signal, basically.
Okay.
So what we can do is boost the treble, cut the treble, and so that's what that frequency sounds like, right? So now we can boost the lows, or cut the lows, right? And so you start to learn what those frequencies sound like. Now the way these mids work, so say I boost, right now I have this set on 3 kilohertz, and then I can sweep, so listen really close.
Looks like a wah.
Yeah.
It is a wah. That's how wah works. But so what I'm doing is I'm boosting a frequency, and then I'm changing. So it's like I have this curve on my equalizer,
Yeah.
and I'm moving that curve
To where you want
to
it.
where I want it.
Yeah.
So
Is that affecting the note though?
No, I don't think so.
it's not affecting the note; it's affecting the volume of notes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So basically, if you said the cymbals were a note, what I'm doing is turning that note up or down,
Okay.
depending on what I want.
Right.
Because it is a note technically. It's not a note you can play on a keyboard because a keyboard doesn't have that range.
Yeah.
But it is a
So
note.
you specifically change not the volume, but the frequencies, the name of the note.
No, you're changing the volume of either the frequency or note.
Okay.
Note and frequency are basically
Same thing.
synonyms.
Okay.
Frequency is just it's the cycles per second of that
It's
note.
just a measurement, kind of.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay.
exactly. It's like a note is a certain frequency, you could say.
Okay.
Just like blue light has a certain frequency that's different from
Right,
green, an A note has a different frequency from a B note.
Okay.
So that's how the frequency works, or the EQ works, I should say. And it's really, this more than anything else is more practice than memorization. Most of the things on the board, you can memorize how they work and then you just use them. EQ, you really have to be able to hear the frequencies that you want. And so, for example, the better you get, you'll be listening to a vocalist or something and you'll actually know, okay, I want to hear less of 800 hertz. And you know that without playing with anything, you just know what 800 hertz sounds like. So that takes a lot of practice and just playing with it before you really get to learn what the different frequencies sound like. Make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the EQ.
That's the EQ. Okay, so that's the video for this week. Just to recap, our key terms were sensitivity, pre-fader, high-pass filter, EQ, and the EQ-Q. So if any of those terms don't sound familiar, you might want to just skim back quickly through the video, look for that key term definition, and make sure that you have an idea what we're talking about there. Otherwise, check out the quiz. There's a link somewhere below. Answer the questions, and then we'll talk about that at our monthly meeting.